Good day, everyone. For our last instructional video, where I'm going to be showing you how to create a city in perspective. So lots of buildings, lots of layers. We may not focus so much on small details in this, but I'm going to show you how to do a whole bunch of cool stuff to construct a city in perspective. So I'm going to suggest that your city in perspective have a high vanishing point or a medium, right in the middle vanishing point. I'm going to do it up high so that we can see on top of some of these buildings, and that way we can draw some extra details on top of buildings as well. So we're going to take our ruler and we are going to be measuring about 2 inches from the top of the paper. And so on this piece of paper that's 12 inches high, that means my mark will be at 10 inches. Obviously, if your paper is less tall, then you're going to want to reduce that amount. After we've got our three 10-inch marks, we're going to stick down our post-it notes like we have done for some of our other demonstrations. And remember, the post-it note is there in order to extend the vanishing point off the paper and reduce the amount of distortion that you see within the image. Because if you think about a circle being drawn between the vanishing points, so a circle drawn to have the vanishing points basically touch it, anything that lays outside of the circle would be out of perspective. So if your vanishing points are out here, then most of your circle is going to be off of the paper, with the exception of in the very bottom corners. So this reduces the amount of distortion that you see in the image and makes your buildings look more realistic. Now, what we're going to do next is we will simply line up our ruler with 2 out of those 3 marks, and we're going to draw our vanishing point as far off as we can along the edge of the paper on our post-it note. We'll line up our ruler with the other 2 marks, or with the one in the middle and the one on the left, in order to make our vanishing point off the paper over here on this side as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to be drawing. Actually, we can get rid of these marks too, get them out of our way so that they don't distract us. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the side, or where the buildings are going to meet the sidewalk, basically. So we're going to draw a line that's going to both of our vanishing points. I'm going to make it start somewhere near the middle of the paper. Do I care if it's exactly in the middle? No. Just somewhere near the middle is fine for me. And I'm not making it too low on the paper. I do want some space so that I can draw, a sidewalk and a curb and maybe some lines in the street and things like that. And then we'll make it go towards our other vanishing point. Now, if you want to draw that line lightly, it's not a horrible idea, because if you want to, you can have some side streets, and I'll probably add at least one of those on this image as an example of how to create those. Now, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to start to create our buildings, and the buildings are going to start along this line. So the first building is obviously going to be at the corner right here, so we'll just draw a straight up and down line from here. You can choose to make these buildings as tall or as short as you want. I'm going to try to make at least 3 layers of buildings here, so I'm not going to make any of them super tall because we don't want to block our view of what's going on further back in space. And then we'll draw the top edge of the building going off towards the right side for the right side of the building. We will draw the top edge for the left side of the building going to our left vanishing point. So it's exactly the same as you've done a whole bunch of times already if you've been practicing along with me in these videos. We'll cap off the sides of the building with 2 straight up and down lines, so just like we did in that very first instructional video. And then we will do the same thing right over here. Now, obviously, I can compare the edge of the ruler to the bottom of the paper as usual. I can also compare it to the front corner, since I'm pretty close to that. All right, so we've got our finished building, with the exception of the top. We still need to draw the top. So from the left side, we're going to go towards our right vanishing point. And from our right side, we'll go to the left vanishing point. Where they cross over each other is the back corner of the building, and we can erase anything else that goes past. Now, we want to have a walkway or some sort of an alleyway space between the buildings, so we don't necessarily want to make our next building super close to this one or joined up with the side of it. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of space. So I'm going to move over by a little ways here, and then I'm going to draw the front corner of this building. Now I'm going to try to vary the heights of the building so that they're not all the same height. So I made this one a little taller, the next one might be even taller, or it might be shorter. There's nothing saying it has to be one way or the other. They could all be the same height, but that's boring, right? So we've already got the bottom left side. We just need the bottom right, the top left side. And now we got to draw the left side of the building. So let's go towards the left over here. And you can make it go as far back as you want. That's kind of a personal choice thing. Now, we are missing one line still before we get to drawing the straight up and down lines. We have the bottom on the right and the top on the right. We've got the top on the left, but we're missing the bottom on the left. And that's just going to go into that alleyway for as long as it can and going towards your left vanishing point until it disappears behind that other building. So that's where we'd stop that line. And that's just showing that there is this space in between the buildings right here. Next, we can draw our straight up and down line again for the right side and the left side to just end the building at the back corners. And then you can draw the top, the left going towards the right, and the right going towards the left. So essentially, you're just going to keep doing that all the way going this way and all the way going that way until you run out of space. Remember that as things go back in space, they will be getting smaller and smaller generally. But if you want to make a taller building or a shorter building, that's totally okay. So I'm going to give myself another alleyway space. This one might be a little less wide than the last one because it is further away. And I'm going to make my next building just a little bit shorter than that one, but maybe not as short as the first one. So just trying to, once again, give a little bit of variety to make the piece more interesting. So I've got the top of the building on the right. We got the bottom of the building on the right. Let's go towards the left. Now what happens when this building is shorter is you're just going to draw the line as long as you can until it hits that other building, and then that's where it's just going behind and you can't see anymore. Now remember, the one thing that people forget is getting the bottom of the building going towards the vanishing point too. So remember that that little short line is going to go towards the left vanishing point, just showing that there is a separation between those buildings and the little alleyway between. We can't see where the straight up and down line will be on the left side because it's behind the building, but we can see where it'll be on the right side. So we've drawn that. And then there's two different ways that you can handle this. You could hypothetically draw this line really light going this way, draw the straight up and down line to figure out where that back corner is, or you can just pretend and just draw a line from this corner going towards the left vanishing point, stop it wherever you feel like it works, and then go towards your other vanishing point or line it up with your other vanishing point on the right, like that. And there you go. You didn't have to draw that side and figure out exactly where the corner was. You just made it up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and draw a couple of more buildings on this side, and then we'll draw a couple of buildings on this side. The steps are exactly the same. So we may end up going into fast forward mode here, and you can just watch me quickly execute these instead of having to wait and be patient. Okay, so now that we've gotten done with drawing a bunch of buildings on the right-hand side, we're going to do the same thing on the left. The steps are exactly the same. So all we're going to do is to start out by drawing the front corner of a building like this, just like this one right over here. The only real difference is that things are going to disappear towards the right side into the alleyway instead of towards the left side. And just remember, this line at the bottom of the building, the one that goes into the alleyway, that's the one that most people forget about. So we're going to go back into fast forward mode again while you watch me draw a whole bunch more buildings here in the front. And then I'm going to show you how to draw the buildings that are further off in the distance. And just remember that little bottom line is the one everybody forgets. Make sure you draw that one going into the alleyway. Now on this side of the street, I am going to draw a street, like a cross street. So I'm going to leave a big gap here and make my next building much further away. Okay, so I think that's going to be the last building I draw on the front here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start to build the buildings that are in the background behind these ones. So you can do as many as you'd like. You can do as many layers as you'd like. So I'm going to start out with drawing a straight up and down line somewhere near the middle. It doesn't have to line up perfectly with this one, although that is an option. And so that line just needs to be straight up and down, and otherwise can go as high or as low as you decide you want to go. So I'm drawing a line right here and towards my, so this one went towards my right vanishing point, this one towards my left vanishing point. I don't have to worry about drawing the bottom of the building. We're not going to see it. It's behind the other ones. So this does make your job a lot easier when you're creating the buildings. So we can draw our straight up and down lines to cap off the ends of the building and then draw the top as long as it's below the horizon line, which is the height of the vanishing points in our case here. And so let's draw this top. Because this object is up higher, we see less of the top. So just notice that as things get higher up in space, you see less of the top because it's closer to the height of the vanishing point. All right, now we're just going to build out some more buildings going in the background on either side. By the way, what if you wanted to draw a building that kind of changes in height? Well, you can draw one line going to the vanishing point, then you can have a straight up and down line. Then you can have another line that points towards that same vanishing point. And then another straight up and down line. So you can do that as many times as you'd like. I'm just going to do it twice. And then you can go towards your vanishing point for the other side. In this case, we're not going to see a lot of this top because it's getting really close to the height of the vanishing points. And because it's getting closer to that height, the top is looking skinnier and skinnier. So it's not wrong. It's just that it's getting closer to our eye level, and therefore we're seeing less of that top present. If we can draw a line from this corner to this vanishing point and have it visible, we will. So let's see if we can do that. It looks like yes, we can just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to draw a couple more over here on this side, and then I'll put in another line of buildings even further back in space. Okay, so we got our second line of buildings here in the background. I'm going to put one more stack of buildings further back, and I think these ones are going to be higher than our vanishing point. So we're going to go ahead and put in just one more line of buildings. Okay, so this seems like a pretty nice full city. We got lots of buildings, we got lots of density, lots of layers going back into space. And at this point, we can start trying to put additional details into the building. So I'm going to show you how to do some doors and windows. These are things that you will already know if you've already watched the video, or really our very first video, or any of the ones like the house and things like that. However, I'm going to show you just in case you had missed that. So the first thing I like to do is to mark the front corner of the building. So this first line right here, this is going to be to represent the height of the door and the tops of the windows on the bottom story. The line right under that is going to be for the bottoms of the windows for that bottom story. And then we'll give ourselves maybe, this looks like maybe a two-story building, so we'll give ourselves one more pair of marks above that, and that'll be about it. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and extend these lines towards our vanishing point on the right and the left. Now I'm going to make this a little different. This is going to be more like an office building where the windows stretch all the way from corner to corner. So I'm not going to bother making the windows broken up into individual windows for this one. I'm going to show you a handful of different ways of making different appearances of windows on these buildings so that you have a little bit of variety to work with and have more choices that you can make so that it's not all the samey boring type of thing. We're going to have some double doors on this building, maybe like sliding doors, and then we'll make the windows just come right up along to the side of those. Now typically there's going to be a door on either side of the building, so we can make it on one on the other side if we want, or we can make just a single door on this side of the building. Because it's on the corner, I'm going to say maybe let's toss some windows and another set of doors on the other side. But on these buildings, we'll just have a door on the one side. All right, so we're going to go and line up those marks along the front corner of the building with our vanishing point on the left-hand side now to draw those windows over on the left. And then we will also draw the doors. You'll notice that I moved the center line for that, double door over here just a little bit. I didn't really mention it while I was doing it, but the reason for that was just because it seemed like the one that was closer to us was actually smaller and the one that was further away was bigger. So I just switched it up so that they were more appropriate in width. In other words, the one that was closer to us should be a little bit wider looking because it's closer to us, it's bigger in space. All right, so we got our first building basically done with doors and windows. What if you wanted some extra details? Yeah, there are other things you can do to this. You can put a sign up here. You can watch my lettering video to see how to do like letters on the front of a building. You could do a billboard, you could do an air conditioner unit or like an elevator shaft up here. I think I might put in a little elevator shaft. I mean, I think that's kind of a cool idea. So that way people can go out onto the roof and kind of hang out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the front corner of that elevator shaft. And then I will draw the bottom and top going towards the right and then towards the left. All right, so now we got our little elevator shaft there. Now, one thing we might want to do is we might want to make it so that there's like a lip to the edge of the building. So in other words, kind of like a wall going around the edge so that people don't just like fall to their deaths if they're walking up there on the roof and slip right at the edge. So now we got this little wall that's going to keep people in the roof. All right. Let's go ahead and think about doing another building now. So let's try a different style of window and door. So I'm still going to make some marks along the corner of the building. And that way we've got something to start with. But this time I'm going to approach this a little differently. So I'm going to make a straight up and down line right here, kind of near the edge of the building. Now I'm going to make one going towards my vanishing point on the right side. And then make one on the other side. So on this building, the windows are going to be not coming up to the edge of the building. They're going to be held within this area that I just defined. So I'll just use those lines that I gave myself along the corner of the building to help to draw these lines in here. All right, so what am I doing? I drew it in the wrong space. So again, teacher isn't always perfect, right? Everybody makes mistakes. If you make one, erase it, try again. Get it right this time. Not a problem. There we go. Now it's in the right area. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to continue to add more windows and doors to the rest of these buildings. I'm going to show you several more different ways of making your windows so that we have, again, a little bit variety, What we're going to do now is we're going to focus on putting some details on the tops of some of these other buildings. So I think I'm going to go for maybe like a pool on the top of this one. We are going to have another elevator shaft somewhere on here just so that we can have that to be able to access the pool. And so we're going to draw a straight up and down line here, and we're going to have the wall that's keeping people from falling off our roof present. I'm not going to draw it all the way over to the other side because we're going to have one of these buildings over here. I'm not going to bother making the doors right here because maybe they might be on the side that we can't see. This will just be a little box on top. And we could even make it like into a surface that a sign could go on, for instance. So I can actually erase that line right here and maybe I'll just put a logo of something right over here. I'll decide what that is later. Now for a pool, you've already learned how to do that. If you followed along with the demo on drawing the more advanced versions of the basic forms, then you learned that you can just draw all 4 lines going towards your vanishing points. Now, if you want to make it an L-shaped pool, you could make it an L-shaped pool, and maybe we'll do that. And then we'll draw down from the corners to show the depth of the pool. But I'm only going to draw it a short distance because I'm going to make it hit the water and then like not be visible past the water line. And now I can draw the water. The water is just going to go towards our vanishing points again. So now we got our pool. We can even make a little diving board if we want to. Although maybe diving right near the edge of a building isn't the best idea in the world. Yeah, somebody's going to do it. Give the diving board a little bit of height here. All right. So what else could we draw? Well, there's any number of different things. We could have like more buildings stacked on top of buildings. So imagine like the Empire State Building. It's like a building on top of a building on top of a building, each one getting smaller. So we could do that on any one of these buildings. It's totally up to you which one. Let's try it with this building just because we won't have to erase as much stuff in the background. So I'm going to draw the front corner. Doesn't have to line up with the front corner of the building that's stacked on top of. In fact, it's better if it's not. And then we'll draw the bottom and top going to the left and right vanishing points. We could draw another building stacked on top of that one. Just bring it in just a little bit further. Draw another straight up and down line. Draw another line going to your vanishing points. Now we don't have to draw the bottom of the building because we're now higher than the vanishing points. So you're not going to see where the bottom of this building touches the top of the one below it. You're just going to see where it's coming out from above. If I want to, I can make another one, but I think that's good enough for now. So what other sorts of things could you draw on the tops of buildings? The possibilities are unlimited. I mean, you could draw all sorts of things. You could draw chairs on top of there and tables. You could draw pretty much anything you could imagine. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with when it comes to details on top of a building is going to be a sign or a billboard. So if I want to do a sign or a billboard on top of a building, then all I would have to do is just to draw 2 straight up and down lines. One on one side, one near the other side. You can make it be as wide as the building if you want. It can be much less wide than the building. Totally your choice. There's no rule that says it has to be any one size. And then we'll draw a line for the top of the billboard. Remember, it could be a billboard, could be a sign, whatever you want it to be. I can erase these lines. They're not going to be visible. And then just decide, do I want it to be on poles or do I want it to just be one huge sign? I think I'm going to put it on some poles. So I'll draw those next. And then draw the bottom of the sign. Now, if this was a bigger sign, we might actually be able to see the thickness of it. But with the size of the image that I'm working with, I'm feeling like the thickness of the sign may not really be all that visible. If you want to, though, you can try. You can draw a teeny little diagonal going towards your right vanishing point from these corners. And you can draw a line going towards your left vanishing point. So this will be the thickness of the sign on the top of it. And then you can draw a straight up and down line from there. And that's where it meets the top of the building. Or that's where it's coming down to meet the top of the building. And then one more at the bottom, going towards that vanishing point where it hits the top of the building. So you can go back and look at my video on how to create lettering, and you can create some lettering in here. Or you can create something else, graffiti or something, or some sort of a piece of artwork, your choice. So from here, I'm going to show you how to create the sidewalk and the streets and things like that, and maybe a couple other small details, and then we're going to call it quits. So to figure out how big the sidewalk is, take a look at the door right here. You don't want your sidewalk to be super skinny compared to the door. So you don't want your sidewalk to be like this. That's not wide enough for people to pass each other. I'm going to say the height of the door should probably be about the width of that sidewalk. So I'm going to push the sidewalk out pretty far, like that. And that way, this sort of length, if it was going towards that vanishing point on that side, yeah, that seems like a pretty good length for our sidewalk. So the corner of our sidewalk is going to be directly below the corner of the building. And we're just going to go towards that right vanishing point. Now I'm noticing that my line is pretty distinctly thick right now, so it's a good time to sharpen my pencil and get myself to a nice sharp point again, and that way I can draw more detail. And then I'll draw my line going to my other vanishing point for the other side of the street. I'm going to make this one a little bit lighter as it goes further towards the back, because remember we talked about making a cross street over here. So I want to make sure I leave myself enough room to be able to draw that cross street. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the thickness of the curb. And that's not going to be a real far distance from the last line. It's going to be pretty close. So that's the top of the curb. We're going to draw one more line representing the bottom of the curve. So this is the straight up and down part, not the left to right part. And then we'll draw those same lines going towards our other vanishing point. So let's start out with our crosswalk. It's just going to line up with where the curb meets the sidewalk. So it's going to line up with this bottom corner right here. I will have another line right next to that one. Sidewalk lines are pretty bold and thick because they're supposed to catch people's attention. So we're going to make them a decent distance apart. And the sidewalk is typically going to be about the width, or the crosswalk is going to be typically about the width of the sidewalk. So we can go like this. Examine my distance between my lines. This one should feel a little bit thicker than that one because this one is further away. And then the lines going in the opposite direction will go towards my right vanishing point instead of the left. Let's go ahead and create the one on the other. So there's our two crosswalks. And just remember, when you're doing crosswalks, every single line goes towards a vanishing point. There's nothing that goes straight up and down. There's nothing that goes at an arbitrary angle. Everything goes to a vanishing point when you're drawing those sidewalks. If you ever want to draw a train track, it's pretty much the same thing. The only difference is you would have a little straight up and down line there, and you'd see the thickness of the train track as well. A little bit more complex, a little bit more work, but not distinctly different in terms of the skills that you would use. Okay, so we talked about wanting to have a cross street over here. It's probably going to be a one-way street because I don't think I really gave myself enough room for a street that would go in two different directions. However, let's go ahead and line up our ruler with our vanishing point. And we're going to be going towards the right vanishing point. And I'm going to try to make the sidewalk look like it's going to be the same thickness, just changing directions to go around the corner of this building. And I'm going to start at the middle line for the curb, because that middle line for the curb is where the change in direction happens from going flat to going straight up and down. And so then you can draw the little straight up and down line if you've got the room. It's a very teeny space, but I think we can just barely fit it in there, just to show the height of the curb there. And then we can draw the thickness of the curb. So we're going to get rid of all these lines right here. Okay, we don't need them except near the corner of the other building, because we're actually going to see the front of the curb going off towards the left vanishing point as well, or the right vanishing point, I mean. So there's the thickness of the curb going off into the distance, and then we can start working with our other side of the street. So I think the curb thickness feels about right in this location. We stop when we hit the middle line of the curb, and it looks like I erased just a little bit too much. I might have to set those back up, going all the way to the end. There we go, and then we can have our little straight up and down line showing that that is the height of the curb over here on this side. Okay. All right, and then after that, we can put in a crosswalk, or we can make a car going down the street and a crosswalk, whatever you want to do in that space. So maybe we'll make a crosswalk going this way. I'm going to skip on doing one this way. You could if you wanted to imply that it wasn't like a T-shaped intersection. If it was a four-way intersection, then yeah, you could make crosswalks going that way too. Okay, so we've now got our cross street going on. And at this point, I am going to go ahead and draw a couple of details so that you can figure out what you might do to liven up the sidewalk and make it a little bit more interesting. So we can draw things like a dumpster, we can draw things like a bus bench, signs and things. So let's go ahead and think about a bus bench. So for these details, I think I'm going to zoom in closer. So I'm going to pause for just a second here and get our camera a lot closer to our image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a bus bench next. I'm going to put it in front of this building, since this building has a nice light line at the bottom, and also because I don't have to deal with a whole bunch of windows and possibly erasing some of my work. And there we go, we got our big cement bus bench drawn. Now typically next to a bus bench, there's going to be a sign for the bus, and sometimes it'll also have a schedule on it and stuff, but we're going to keep it simple. Just a plain sign that says bus. Let's say we want to do a manhole cover in the street. Well, we learned before that you can get a circle by following a whole bunch of steps. And those steps were really hard to follow if you're working in a small area. So remember that if you want to draw a circle and you don't want to follow all those steps, draw a square first. and simply draw a circle that goes from the centers of each side of the square, curving as close as possible to the corners, like this. Let's say we want to draw a trash can. Well, it's kind of the same thing. So you can draw the opening of the trash can or where it hits the ground, wherever you want to kind of start. We're going to do the same thing where we're trying to draw a circle that comes as close to the corners of that square as possible while meeting to the centers of each one of the four sides. And then we can draw a straight up and down line. Let's get rid of the square first though. So then we can draw a straight up and down line from the outsides of the circle. And just copy this part of the circle down below. So it could be a cement trash can like we see at school, or it could be one of those wire mesh ones, whatever you think is going to look good on the street that you are drawing. Actually, let's draw a dumpster. Let's draw one right over here somewhere. There's not a lot of room, but we can probably just block traffic on the sidewalk. So here's the front of the dumpster. Here's it going off towards our vanishing points on the left and towards the right. Okay, so now that we've got our image all panned back, you can see that we've got a pretty successful looking start to a cityscape. Now, obviously, if this was going to be my final project and I was turning in for grade, I'd be finishing all the windows on these buildings. And to be quite honest, I'd probably make a lot of them be like this one, especially these ones in the background because, well, probably like these two, because it's really easy just to draw lines that go in one direction and then the other, or to draw a little frame and then make lines that go in one direction and then another frame and lines that go in the other. So it's really easy to finish this off once you've got the front buildings all finished, because you can just go with an easier method of window making instead of trying to make a bunch of individual panes like this one. And obviously you wouldn't be able to see the tops on most of these. So there wouldn't really be the need to try to come up with ideas for details to put on top of them either. Running through a couple ideas I have seen students do in the past, things like a helicopter pad. So you could have like a circle drawn, kind of like we did for this one on the top of one of these buildings, and have an H. All the lines of the H go either towards one vanishing point or the other to make it look like it's flat on the ground. I've seen people do, like I mentioned before, tables and chairs. I've seen like swing sets, although that doesn't sound very safe to me, but hey, whatever works for, the individual. And if you need any help with anything at any point, just ask me in class. Obviously, if you're following along online, then that's a little bit tougher. But you are welcome to post some comments and make some suggestions about what you would like to see in a future 2-point perspective drawing video. If you'd like to draw some simple cars driving down the street, you can check out my car drawing video. If you want to have words on a billboard or on the front of a building or anything like that, check out the lettering video that I've shot. So you can combine together the skills that you've learned in these different videos to create more and more complex, interesting, and high quality images as your skills develop. I hope you all have a great evening or day, depending on where you're at, and take care.